6, 2023. It is 16:35. And I will start with roll calls. Susan Heffley, I am here. Kim Austin.
Here.
Daniel Krim. I see.
I'm here.
All right. Samantha is on vacation. Matthew Mitchell.
Here.
Valerie Pyatt.
Here.
Mark Nitz.
Here.
Jeff Bauman.
I'm here.
Ryan Turley. No. Adam Williams. Nope. And we have Councilman McCarthy here. And seeing anybody else? in our-
Adam Shimoni.
He's late. Citizen Shimoni is late. All right, did I miss any? Oh, we've got Jordan Hollinger. Hollinger, sorry. We've got Paul Mood. And that's the only wildlings I see. All right. Starting with comments from the board. Does anybody have comments or questions to provide for this BAC staff?
I got a comment. I was just disappointed that I've been through some road construction for my daily commute and noticed there's no provisions for bicycles in any way. And it shoots the cars about, I don't know, about a half mile out of the way.
Out of your way or out of everybody's way?
Well,
So where do you have to go? You have to follow the cars that are a half mile.
I don't know. That's
You don't
okay.
know.
I'm at a walking pace, so a lot of times I resort to the sidewalk and
So where's this?
up Solier. Mark probably is aware of it.
I saw it going home last night, so I knew it was gonna be closed this morning,
Yeah.
so I didn't go all the way down there, but there were no detour signs leading.
Yeah, just for like, the bike lane disappears and,
Yeah,
but that's an ongoing thing. It's been like that.
is the whole right lane closed?
Yeah, the whole right lane's
To
closed.
vehicles as well?
Yeah, they're diverting everybody down that road that connects to
Is
Sparrow.
that the south or the north lane?
Well, that's the
Because the
lane.
right lane depends on
Westbound
which way you're
lane,
going.
and it resorts you south.
Okay,
Half mile probably.
okay. All right, any other comments from the staff?
Kim's got
Kim, you're behind me. Yes, go. You're muted. Turn yourself on.
I pressed the button, but I guess not hard enough. I had a meeting with Jacob, don't remember his last name, Martin, you probably know. He is working on a bike share program for the city for employees, and using electric bikes. And we're working on some, bike safety requirements, kind of modules that they have to go through before they're allowed to, borrow these. But I think they're going to have 7 or 8 and an electric scooter or something to use for staff, to take mail to the mailbox, whatever. And I guess everyone is super excited about it.
So this is just for the city, not just for the city staff, not the whole city.
Nope.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Wonder whatever happened to that bike share program. Died with so many other things on COVID. All right, anyone else? I have kind of tied in with Matthew's comments. I was wondering if we could present a letter to the city council and particularly the maintenance staff facilities with a list of bikers' rights perhaps, or, to deal with how bike facilities are maintained, cared for, when there's, make sure that they're kept clean of debris and plants, garbage cans, construction blockages, also to keep the sharrows and all the painted stuff up to date. And then the third point would be maybe bike lanes would be scooped of snow within a certain time frame. And then have an update page on the web so that people can follow what we're doing. And we have one sort of, but it's not kept up to date, but it'd be one that would cover like every bike issue in town would be really nice. So is anybody in favor of writing a letter and presenting that to the facility? Would it do any good, Martin? Or Jim?
Well, we probably refer it to staff, you know,
Yeah,
if it's like a maintenance issue. I mean, council gets involved in policy decisions, but we don't get involved in managing the city decisions. Unless it's really blatant or, well, you know, and we can I brought things up to the city manager and said, hey, this one could use some attention. So it might fall under that category.
all right, well, I'll draft it and we can talk about it next time.
We've obviously had discussions about getting the snow off where the candlesticks are,
Mhm.
but, you know, and it's come up, I think Adam's brought it up, Adam Shimoni's brought it up,
Yeah,
because, you know, one of my pet peeves, just as a real quick aside, is when I'm walking around town, I'm tall, you may have noticed, and like these branches are like right across. You know what
it's
I
a good
do?
growing season right now.
I just break them off.
Well, my rule is if it's overhang the sidewalk, especially if it's flowers, then I'm allowed to break them off and take them to it.
Flowers especially. Yeah, I've never been caught, but I do that. I break them off all the time.
Yeah.
It's just a little message. It's like, don't block the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And same with because a lot of people ride on, kids in my neighborhood ride on the sidewalk all the time, which is fine if they're not downtown, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's been my experience when I report a concern on the city webpage.
Mhm.
They, if you do it correctly, they assign a work order on it, and it's date stamped and it's numbered, and it typically will be addressed at some point. And it won't go away, and it prioritizes it too.
Yeah,
So that's like immediate
yeah,
too.
yeah. And I know that that works well, but there's a lot of people out there, without naming names, somebody I worked for, who just, I keep pointing him at that website, but he just keeps complaining about the Sharrows wearing off. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have a biker's bill of rights or something on the record, just to say, you know, one more reason why we need to be heard.
Well, it's city policy that we're trying to promote head and bike. So that follows that it needs maintenance and
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
So it isn't like a new policy. It's just
Yeah.
like, let's do what's right.
Yeah. Righto. All right, I think that's all I had. Anyone else? Okay, so now the public can speak. And I know Jonathan has some information he has relevant to the hospital stuff.
Yeah, so when the hospital, if, as they said, they're gonna, pays to pave the FUTs all the way to, town, hospital location, if that indeed ends up happening. So that one's the less major one. That just occurred to me to toss in. So that stretch of FUTs next to Walmart, when they go to pave that, it would be nice if they brought it up to street and driveway grade, because I haven't used it lately. I just use the sidewalks on Beulah, to be honest, because the bike lanes are not safe there. I constantly see people driving in the bike lanes there. But a long time ago, I used to notice homeless people congregating down in there because it's well below street level, and you know they're pretty invisible there, and just lots of trash accumulates there. I imagine most of it blows over from the Walmart parking lot, but so the much more relevant one is on the other map.
So I think the agreement in the development agreement is that they'll have a paved foot trail from the hospital to Beulah, but you're
Oh,
suggesting,
only to Beulah.
yeah,
Well-
not Beulah, or what's that side street, right,
Macomb?
whatever it is. I'm not
Macomb
sure
is the one at the
exactly, but I
top.
don't think it's all the way back up to where you're suggesting.
Macomb, oh, okay, just probably then to
like
Woodlands.
Berry Road.
Yes.
Oh, I see, okay. Well then, okay, so the other map covers
Let me share that one.
So, right, so along Beulah, so, yeah, so for the, until you reach where Mountain Dell Road currently splits in that very long Y,
Right.
I was thinking, so why not leave the existing Futz Trail unpaved because joggers and mountain bikers like the dirt. And instead, make the sidewalk much wider and preferably away from the street so it doesn't get covered in winter by the snowplows. So that's that part. And then since Beulah is going to turn, Mountain Dell Road is going to turn into a T where it hits Beulah. So the orange section is where Mountain Dell Road currently goes like 100 yards at least. Pretty much parallel to Beulah before it reaches the same grade and joins up with it. So evidently there's plans to give that to the property owner. I forget her name, but
Resnick.
Mike Resnick's widow. Yeah, Mike Resnick's, it's Mike, not Pete's, and Mike's dead now, so she has she went back to her old last name. I forget her name, but in any case, hopefully that hasn't been promised to her yet. But it would be nice if a slice of that were preserved, so like instead of having to pay
Go
for
ahead and
extra.
stand up there and show us
Oh, sure.
what you're.
So
what you're talking about.
just for this
Do it
section.
on the,
Oh, okay,
if you don't mind, then everybody else
Sure.
can see it too.
okay. So starting where red turns to orange this is where the intersection is, the current intersection between Beulah and Mountain Dell Road. The new intersection this is not going very smoothly. The new intersection is going to be over here. They're going to curve Mountain Dell Road this way and have it be a T. So one issue with that is that means there's going to be hills to get through both ways. So it goes significantly uphill by the time it reaches where it's going to T. So that's why I was saying, like, so orange is existing Mountain Dell Road. So if on that orange section, wow, it is really hard to aim it with it stuttering like this. Okay, so for the orange section, it would be nice if, so they repaved that recently when they did the whole sewer project. So that's nice fresh pavement. So rather than paying for to pave the existing Futz Trail that goes up and down hill twice, up along the edge of University Heights or University Terrace or whatever it is there. And those are significant hills, so enough to deter commuters. So that could be preserved dirt as well, and the recreational users like the hills, it's more exercise. Whereas this is the only way to have it stay flat going through there. Since, especially now that the unofficial trail that is still labeled Palmer Trail on Google, but that Resnick's widow had blocked off in exchange for letting the sewer project cross her land. So there's now steel or rails blocking both ends of that unofficial trail. That was the old railway right of way from the lumber train from way the hell back when. That was perfectly flat and very direct and a great way to get through there. I live in Mountain Dell and I used to commute on that trail. And now that it's blocked, I could easily go around it. But, you know, I just respect it. And now I just bike on the damn road. So in any case, so according to Matt Ryan, the county supervisor, she is hoping to build there at some point. I'm not sure if she can get the flood zone variance, but she might be able to. For instance, this property here is owned by the same owner as owns this apartment complex right here. And in exchange for using this as a staging area for both the sewage project and the channelization, whatever you call it, of Sinclair Wash through Mountain Dell. They built this property that the arrow is on right now. They built that up significantly using a bunch of the fill that they dug out of the canal. And that had been designated a flood zone, and he now will have the right to develop this piece of property that before would have, like everything that was in the flood zone before was grandfathered in. But now that's been built up. So I imagine that she might be able to get a variance to build this whole area here. And if she can continue building on up to where the existing Futz Trail actually comes down here, not where Google shows it. Google shows it coming down. Man, that's hard to move. Okay, right here, but it actually it goes over another hill and comes down here. So I imagine that from where the Futz Trail comes down, that's going to be too narrow now, and she will not, from here on over to Mountain Dell, I'm pretty sure she won't be allowed to develop that because that's a narrow floodplain. But perhaps from here on back, I'm not sure what she's hoping to be able to develop. But in any case, if this is the only option, then the yellow would just be a sidewalk, or basically have the paved Futz Trail just be a wide shoulder on Mountain Dell Road, and then have and actually here's where the Futz Trail comes down, actually where the blue starts. So then talk her into letting you build a little link over to, and then go ahead and pave this existing very flat, very straight section of Futz Trail. And then leave this part of the Futz Trail that wraps around the back of this part of Mountain Dell and again goes over a fairly significant hill, especially on this end where the pink is. So from where the pink line is that arrow? Okay, from there over to Sinclair Street. That is a heck of a steep little hill. You really got to get some momentum going, and you come around a corner. So I'm just looking at getting rid of any excuses people might have for not commuting. I realize electric bikes are a thing these days, but really the standard should be to get it as comfortably bikeable as possible for people pedaling. And so there are other parts of town where the Futz Trail just runs into a quiet residential street, a low use, low traffic residential street, which, so even though the speed limit is lower on Mountain Dell Road until you reach Mountain Dell, pretty much everybody goes 40 miles an hour until they hit the edge of town. The responsible ones go ahead and slow down, including me, slow down to 25 when we hit Mountain Dell Road. But I'll just admit, when I drive, which is rare, but on Mountain Dell Road itself, until it hits Mountain Dell, I go 40 because there's no reason not to. There's no cross streets. It's just, I'm not sure why the speed limit changes to 25 way the heck back here. It's kind of silly. But I guess it starts where the yellow starts is where it turns into 25. Nobody obeys. I mean, very few very old people obey that. Almost nobody obeys that. So then there's other sections of town where the Futz Trail just merges for a while with a quiet residential street. I'm pretty sure that's going to stay quiet residential. Mountain Dell, since I've been there, has twice fought off bids to go through Mountain Dell to new developments, and those have both been shot down when the Resnick property, Pete Resnick's property here, when he sold that to developers and had that developed, he was hoping to have access to that be through Cochrane. That got shot down. Sorry, I'll hurry along here. And then when Bellagio Montana first was trying to get in, they supposedly were proposing at one point to try and go through Mountain Dell. That got shot down. So I'm pretty sure this blue section, dark blue section here, will remain a very quiet residential, like very low use residential street, because Mountain Dell might get a little denser, but barely. Okay, so then almost there, So this purple section is currently dirt. If one were to just pave this tiny little section between Sinclair Street and and Sinclair Wash, one could avoid the hill both. So up Sinclair Street is a very steep hill. This section of Futz Trail from the pink over to Sinclair Street is a very steep hill. Could avoid that by paving Palmer over to here. And then I'm not sure what happened to the property rights there. I'm pretty darn sure the county still has an easement along that canal, though, or still owns the canal. I'm not sure that, but the property owners have all been given easements to use to use right up to the canal railing as if it was their own. But perhaps the folks here could be given some sort of incentive. I'm not sure what it would take, if it would have to be monetary or what, to have the Futz Trail hug right up against the railing of the canal over to the existing Futz Trail, and then from there on it's flat. So that's a way of having the entire Futz Trail from town to the hospital be pretty darn flat, even grade, which is huge for commuters. I'm a determined commuter. I'll go over hills. I keep getting stronger with age. So, but most people, it does not take too many hills to dissuade them from commuting. So that's my whole proposal. And another way to sell it is, again, this whole stretch from here potentially all the way to Lake Mary Road could stay dirt for the recreational users. And then this part here wrapping around the back of Mountain Dell could also remain dirt, and, and then just have perfectly flat paved parts for commuters that are separate from the hilly dirt parts for recreational users. So that's my proposal.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Sure.
A lot of work into this. Any comments?
I don't know if we're allowed to comment, are we?
Are we allowed to comment?
Well, we can put it on the agenda, right?
Good.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Where's so far? I'm curious, like, when's the timing when, bike facilities for the hospital can be planned?
With their, first phase,
Okay,
they would improve Beulah. Up
so I
to,
guess like it's timely for this, proposal.
The main part I'm concerned about time-wise is I'm not sure what the schedule is on Mount Del Road being reoriented to a T. I imagine it will happen when they widen Beulah. That would make sense.
I think it'll
Oh,
widen
and
it.
the other selling point on this is the hospital would be paying for less grading and pavement because it's more direct, and they wouldn't have to be grading over hills alongside. And then, the neighborhood there, the University Heights, University Terrace would be less affected by all this construction to put in pavement on hills. And I'm just guessing that grading and paving, and especially right up against the road, it's just another selling point. And that whole yellow section there, they wouldn't have to pay. I'm sorry, the whole orange section, they wouldn't have to pay at all. There's brand spanking new pavement there that they could just narrow it down to 10 feet or 12 feet wide or whatever the ideal is, and just knock out some of it and save a lot of money on paving that. So
That's great. And we'll keep your contact information. So if the discussion comes up, we'll be sure and be on board. Any other questions?
You might want to get the hospital involved too.
yeah, I was thinking of sending this to, what's the name of the guy, the main guy from the hospital in charge of
The guy I
the
know
black
is
beard?
Rich Bowen.
Steve Ice, maybe you're thinking of.
Not sure that he's actually a hospital employee, not the architect. Blackbeard,
The goatee.
yes.
I think it's Steve Ice, right? Doesn't he wear that goatee?
I'm not sure what her name is.
If anybody has contact info for him to send him.
So
All right.
write me an email. I'm Jim McCarthy on City Council,
Okay.
and ask for contact information for the hospital, and I'll get you some names.
Cool, thank you.
Very good. We'll just have to keep track on how the petition goes that's fighting the hospital move.
We'll probably be successful.
Do you think it'll be successful to keep the hospital from moving?
Well, two things. Will they get enough signatures to get it on the ballot? I think
They already
no
have,
doubt
I
they
think.
will. And if nothing else, that'll delay it until December or November when the election is. So.
Some of my friends have signed it.
Very good, thank you. So we can go on to our old business, although I was gonna see if there was a way that we could move a couple of the concluding general. They tend to get bumped off the list usually, and I was hoping we could at least look at, well, particularly the item C with maybe E, A, and B in there as well.
Not all of them.
No, I didn't care about the Elks Lodge, that just lives there. But I think the transportation section reorganization is new, so I wanted to hear what you had to say about that. Can we, is everybody okay if we just bump a few of those and get them taken care of quickly? Good deal.
Okay, first mile, last mile bikeway projects. We have a consultant that's working on 15% plans for that. I think we've looked at those maps before. So the bikeways part will be a series of restriping. In some cases, adding bike lanes where they're missing. In a bunch of cases, adding buffered bike lanes where there are currently bike lanes. And at a number of intersections, kind of continuing some kind of treatment up to the intersection and then after it as well. And then the second part of that would be more enhanced corridors. So I think it's like San Francisco and Cedar and Forest and Beaver that we're looking at, as well as Solier and parts of Butler, to introduce cross bike markings, two-stage left turn boxes, green shared lane markings where we have shared lane markings and a few other things like that to make kind of a more visible and consistent corridor along some of them. They don't necessarily upgrade the facilities. Like if you're using a bike lane, you're probably still using a bike lane, but at least it will make it, the treatment consistent and a little bit more visible for cyclists to kind of highlight it as a corridor. So that's underway. We're in the, like I said, we're preparing 15% plans for that. That probably, nothing will happen this summer, but hopefully next summer, there'll be some work. For B, I had intended to get some information on the schedule. So, these projects are kind of moving along to let you know, like when design was wrapping up and when construction could be expected and when they expect it to be finished, but I don't have that information. I can get it for next meeting though. Transportation section, so the council approved its budget this month. That went into effect on Saturday, I think was the start of the fiscal year. And we have a new position in the transportation section that is a transportation planner. And we're being reorganized into kind of two tracks, one being kind of engineering and operations, another one being planning. So the planning section will have three people that are part of it. Chris Fair, who was recently hired, and then a new transportation planner, who we're just in the process of writing the job description for, and we'll advertise before too long. It may take us a little while to get that filled. But once that's done, we'll have three people working on transportation planning with a definitive emphasis on multimodal transportation planning.
So a mini Martin in there someplace? Or
The
multiple mini
three of
Martins?
us, yeah.
3 mini
Yeah.
Martins?
Yeah, it will be a three-headed thing.
And then who is there someone in charge of
Of that,
the,
that would
like the
be-
two tracks or whatever?
Jeff will be in charge. So it's Jeff and then Reed, Steph and David and Martin. Chris, and TBD. I don't think we should tell them that.
So, well, we can make you Martin 2.0 and make him or her
Yeah.
Martin 1.0.
Okay, and then when does that start taking effect?
Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff or Paul, but I think it's essentially taken effect.
It
I think
has.
some things we have to do the paperwork through HR and get the position advertised and get the, reclassifications done for, the people who are there.
So exciting.
That's great.
I bet you're looking forward to that.
I am. I think we could be much more productive getting things planned and built.
I know.
You may have to park your bike outside again. Share that office. No, that won't happen.
That's not happening.
The other
Outside.
person, the mini Martin will have a little lean-to
Yeah.
outside the.
Park my
building.
bike in the outside.
I know, it's good enough you gotta ride it out there.
And appointments, reappointments, is there any,
No,
nothing new,
but I think
nothing
we have,
to-
I think we have a transportation commission coming up in August.
do we have, how many candidates do we have? Do you have any, have you made
No.
any proposals?
We haven't, no, we haven't got any new candidates.
Okay.
So it's the same. There were, I think, I forget how many there were, 6 or 7.
There were 4 openings.
Bing, Bing, and Kim. So Matt, me and Kim are,
3 are living on borrowed time. Yeah.
Push those Gen Zers, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I have I know of a white male who lives in a, what did you call it? Disadvantaged district, or I forget what you had on the crash data map, but, anyway, he lives in Pine Knoll, and he allowed for some interest. Hasten. Not a huge amount of interest, but
You couldn't talk to me about that.
he said, well, I am a white male. And I go, I know, but you are from a disadvantaged neighborhood, so maybe that helps. But yeah, we do. Do we need to run an advertisement campaign to elicit?
We have 6 applicants.
Yeah.
Are they just
Well,
not good or?
Matt and Daniel and I got together on that list a while before. And I think we've hired or offered to those that we found really intriguing.
We're just waiting, we're just waiting for me to get it all together and get it, to reach out to the applicants and
Oh, okay.
make sure that they're
So
still.
they're still viable, the
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
So are
Okay.
you talking about Transportation Commission or Bike?
BAC.
BAC, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Who gets appointed by the Transportation
Right.
Commission.
Okay, so August is relevant because if we're gonna pick any new people, we should do
They
that
have to be
before August.
approved by the transportation before they can take their place here.
So, I mean, do we like any of the remaining people?
I kind of, I think the ones that really impressed if we already offered
Yeah.
positions to, and the
Right.
rest, we were like,
Right, so we have to find new people.
Yeah, but our process last time, we prioritized everything.
Yeah.
So we got
we can revisit that.
candidates
Take a look
in
at it.
place that were at the top and then
Right.
we just moved down the line. Should be all right.
But it wouldn't hurt to have some fresh blood,
No.
because we were looking to get more diverse candidates, and we're still really lacking in representation in the disadvantaged neighborhoods, and that's so hard to get. But that's definitely something I'd like to see.
Yeah.
More of that. Okay, we can proceed with the old business now.
All right. So the first item is a update on the regional plan. And we have Jordan Hollinger on the line. And I will turn the facilities over to him. and have
Great.
him, go ahead and introduce yourself, Jordan.
Great. Hey, everyone. Good to be with you all. I'm Jordan Hollinger. I'm an associate planner with the city's comprehensive planning team. So just here to provide an update to you all on the update to the Flagstaff Regional Plan. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And just confirming that you can all see that title page there.
Yes.
Great. All right, I'm going to turn my
Yes.
camera off while I do this too. And I won't be able to see the chat while I'm doing this, so just yell if you see something that doesn't make sense or you have questions about. And I'll also leave some time at the end for questions. So, all right. So just to start out, last year you might remember it was either, I think it might have been me, but it might have been Sarah Dector. One of us came to you, and we were also going to the all 20 other boards and commissions with the city and county, and asked you to engage with us in a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats assessment. And we've since taken that feedback, and we've gone forward, and we've been working with the public kind of over a couple different processes, and are now at a pretty exciting time in the plan update project. So we're just back providing an update as to where we are with the project, and also to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have in terms of where we are. So just as a quick reminder, the Flagstaff Regional Plan is the city's general plan. It sits at the top of our planning and code hierarchy. So it's our highest level planning and policy document, and it's the only one that is adopted by voters within the city. It works a little bit differently if you're in the county. So we call it a regional plan because we co-create it with Coconino County to cover both the city of Flagstaff as well as the unincorporated communities that surround Flagstaff. So for us in the city, as I mentioned, it serves as our general plan, while in the county, it's an amendment to the county comprehensive plan. So just to take you back in terms of how we're approaching the update process, at the start, we sort of identified these 4 distinct phases of plan development. We're currently in phase 2 of the plan. Phase 1, which included that SWOT assessment that we did with boards and commissions, was really about preparing background materials, producing, we did a series of informational webinars, we collected a lot of data, we did some preliminary discussions with people in the community, just talking about what people cared about in terms of the future of Flagstaff. We also did several art projects and just tried to kind of get momentum going and some excitement building about the regional plan update. So since last fall, we've been working through phase 2, and the theme of phase 2 has been what's possible, or what's the vision for the future of Flagstaff. And what I'll talk a little bit about with you this evening is what we've been exploring in that space and what is to come in the near future. We're really close to putting pen to paper at this point and actually start writing the next regional plan, and that'll hopefully start happening this fall. So as I mentioned, last fall we started phase 2 of the regional plan update, and we started that off with a series of what we called visioning workshops. And we held 11 total workshops spread throughout the regional planning area. Maybe some of you attended one of those. And our central or focal question for the workshops was, think about where and how you live, work, and play in the Flagstaff region. How can we build a community together that allows all community members of the region to thrive through 2045 and beyond? And during the workshops, we had 4 stations that included a what we call the card storming, or where we asked people to write their vision statements for the future. We had a challenges or trade-offs station where we asked people to think about certain questions that they thought should be prioritized when writing the next regional plan. We had a community asset mapping station, and then we had kind of a less formalized talk with your neighbor station where people it was just facilitated conversation that people could talk with other participants about the things that mattered to them. So in total, we had about 150, a little over 150 workshop participants. And then simultaneous to the workshops, we had a visioning survey that was put to the public posing similar questions. And we had about 126 respondents to that survey as well. So from those workshops and the survey, we heard a lot about what the community values, what they want to see for the future of Flagstaff, and ultimately potentially what could be central themes or organizing principles for the next regional plan. So maybe not a surprise, but probably the most frequently cited element of the Flagstaff community that people said that they valued is our natural environment, open spaces, parks, and in particular, ensuring that those are things that people have access to well into the future. We also heard a desire for more transportation options outside of single occupancy vehicles. Hopefully, thumbs up from this group for that. We heard about better and more affordable housing options. We heard a desire to see a more equitable future for Flagstaff residents, concern about retaining our community character, and then ensuring that the City Council and Board of Supervisors are responsive and accountable to community needs. So moving from kind of the conversation around values and kind of that high level community vision, we're now in a process called scenario planning or exploratory scenario planning. And scenario planning is really all about testing ideas and trying to understand how different policy directions or policy ideas may play out in the future. So to do this, we are using a software called Urban Footprint, which is what we call a sketch modeling software. And this type of program allows us to test different ways of allocating growth and development across our regional planning area. So ultimately, we can kind of say things like, if we're going to grow and we grow in this particular way, what does that mean for things like driving behavior, um, active transportation mode use, water consumption, housing prices? So the modeling software, Urban Footprint, has a lot of different outputs that we can look at when we're talking about allocating growth and development differently throughout the region. So in the scenario planning process, we have formed what we're calling a technical advisory group, and they are really helping to advise us as staff and our consultant team, Cascadia Partners, on the assumptions and data that we're bringing to the scenario planning process. Right now, we are in the middle of that group looking over materials from several workshops that we've held and developing what we call scenario themes. And those involve scenario themes are what we refer to when we're taking broad sets of growth ideas that came from some of this public participation and distilling them down into narratives in terms of growth and development that we ultimately model using that software Urban Footprint that I mentioned. So once we've finished creating those themes and model them, that's happening right now or will happen in the next month or so, we will bring the results of those scenario themes and the model results back to the public so that they can see what different ways of growing in our region means for our community. Again, in terms of things like water consumption, carbon emissions, those types of things are ultimately what we can test. So an important element of the scenario planning process is that in addition to creating kind of these unique growth scenarios that look at what if we do X or what if we do Y, we're also testing them against a scenario of what if we do nothing. Or maybe stated a little bit better, what if recent and past trends continue into the future? And I think that's one of the more powerful elements of scenario planning, really getting to test different policy directions against one another, as well as against kind of our current trajectory as a community. So later this fall, we'll bring those scenarios back to the public, as I mentioned, so that they can see what each one means for our community. And then ultimately, we'll do a scenario choosing process as well. So our technical advisory group is made up of different experts from the community. Many of the people on the list to the right here are experts in a particular field, like housing, transportation, while others are what we would consider community experts who maybe understand more about how this type of analysis and the data we're producing can tell a compelling or potentially troublesome or misleading story about the impacts to people. So all of these folks that you see on the screen here have volunteered to help us. We invited them from a larger pool of people with wide-ranging expertise. And we always like to remind people that this group is not deciding policy direction. They are simply helping us to decide how we test what we hear from the community and how we can be as robust as possible in the scenario modeling process. So we meet with this group roughly once or twice a month. We record their meetings and we've been posting them to our project website with the opportunity for people to comment on what they heard during those meetings. So while the technical advisory group or TAG has been working kind of in the back end, we've also been heavily engaged with the community with the idea of growth and kind of uncertain futures. So earlier this spring, we hosted 13 workshops that we called Face the Future Flagstaff, including 5 of which that were held in non-traditional workshop settings. So we went to, just to list a couple, we went to A New Living, which is a local transitional housing organization. The Northern Arizona Interfaith Council helped us host an all Spanish workshop that included a lot of people that aren't typically engaged in this type of process. We also held several in oh, I'm getting a little feedback all of a sudden.
Is your email turned?
Trying to figure out this thing.
Oh, I think that might have, I think it was someone that joined was echoing. Anyway, I think it's okay now. So we held several workshops in classroom settings as well. So we held one with the Flagstaff High School Native American and Hispanic Heritage Clubs, and we held 2 at the Northland Prep Academy as well. So those were really cool opportunities to engage youth in this process as well. And then just to talk a little bit about the workshop itself, this wasn't sort of a typical workshop where you go around to different stations and provide some feedback. We did what we call gamifying our planning and scenario work. So the way this worked is that we had participants broken up into groups of 5 or 6. Each group received a game board that was a gridded map of the regional planning area, kind of what you see on the bottom of the screen here. And then they were assigned 3 random, what we call challenge cards that had conditions pertaining to jobs and population growth, climate change impacts, and infrastructure funding. And the goal of the game was to allocate different types of growth. So think residential, commercial, industrial, public, civic, that kind of thing. So allocating those types of growth throughout the region under the conditions that were randomly assigned for their particular game. So what this forced people to do was, instead of just kind of telling us, taking the traditional approach of telling us where they did and didn't want growth, it pushed people into a space of thinking more strategically about growth given their specific game conditions. So for example, in a scenario where a group had high population and jobs growth, but low future infrastructure funding, they had to think about whether they should optimize new growth along existing infrastructure to try to limit new infrastructure costs. Um, and I think one of the things that's powerful about doing scenario planning in this way is that it um, sometimes it difficult for people to get into this, but it does ultimately shake up a lot of our assumptions and predetermined ideas about what the future holds, and tasks us with solving challenges collectively. So out of this process, we created 60 maps and a spreadsheet of detailed notes about how each group played the game and why they placed the game tokens in the way that they did. So we had 2 really great interns, that Sullivan Moore and Joseph O'Connell, who spent a few weeks digitizing all of that analog map data and performing content analysis on all of the group notes, and turned that into information. Turned that information into data for our consultants and our technical advisory group to consider as we move into the actual modeling phase of scenario planning. So some of the major themes that we saw coming out of these Face the Future workshops included general support for the idea of complete neighborhoods or mixed use development that supports multimodal access to services and amenities. We definitely also heard concerns about growth and what that means in terms of community character, and certainly along with that, a desire to manage density throughout the community. We also heard a lot of support for transit, better roads, multimodal connectivity, and then a desire to try to mitigate congestion as well. Um, like we heard in the visioning workshops, protecting open spaces, national forests, parks, and other natural amenities was a really big theme as well. So from the visioning workshops that happened a little bit earlier, and these more recent Face the Future workshops, as well as from some online surveys that we had running, our technical advisory group and consultants have started to look at how we can package some of these ideas into scenario themes that then get built into our modeling software. So after this step, I've mentioned this already, but we'll bring the results of of that modeling effort back to the community, and we'll have what we call a scenario choosing process. And this is where people will really get to weigh in on what they think about the scenarios and ultimately, hopefully, help us pick one that we will start creating the next regional plan around. So I also mentioned this already, but part of this process is creating what we call a business as usual model. And this model takes recent trends and extends them out into our modeling time horizon, which in this case is 2045. And our consultants are really close to finalizing this model. And what we're seeing from the preliminary results is that if we kind of continue with current trends, a lot of our issues get worse or they sort of stagnate. So what we see in the preliminary results is that we certainly will see more housing affordability issues. And then we are seeing that we probably won't move the needle on things like carbon neutrality. So doing this type of modeling, so kind of building a business as usual model along with our alternative or kind of policy directive scenarios gives us a really good picture of a range of futures for the Flagstaff community, and also I think makes our policy setting a lot more robust. So to round out phase two and move into phase three, we have had some recent events that we wanted to make you aware of because we've recorded some, and then we do have some upcoming events that we also wanted to make sure you were aware of. So a couple weeks ago, we held a webinar, or our consultants held a webinar where they really talked a little bit more in depth about this scenario planning process. And we have recorded that webinar, and it's available at the link that you see on the screen here. And I can put that in the chat once I'm done presenting. But that's a really good opportunity to learn more about the scenario planning process. So I encourage you to go check that out. We have another tag meeting coming up that'll happen. I believe it's actually scheduled for August 1st. Those aren't viewable live, but it's posted the day after the meetings. But that tag meeting will be um, kind of the first opportunity to get an idea of what our scenario themes are going to look like through this process. And then, as I've mentioned a couple times, that scenario choosing process will happen later this fall. So after we're done with all this kind of public engagement, talking and listening, and identifying kind of these ideas and things that people care about, we have to actually start writing the plan. So that is moving into phase three. And that will be kicked off by that scenario choosing process later this fall. So in terms of writing the plan, we are convening a city and county manager appointed committee to oversee the writing of the plan. And the way this works is that we have received nominations from city council members and board of supervisors. And we are now creating a staff report that will discuss if there are any gaps in knowledge or demographic or geographic representativeness across those nominations. And then ultimately, we will provide a list to the city and county managers who will review it and ultimately invite 20 people out of that list, roughly 20 people out of that list, to join the committee. So our hope is that the first committee meeting will take place in August or September of this year. And throughout the writing phase of this next version of the regional plan, the group will meet roughly 1 to 2 times per month. And I think it's important to mention that, or to note that this is not a formal city or county commission. So the committee will kind of set up its own rules on things like quorum and operating procedures. And I think one of the cool things about having that type of committee oversee the plan creation process is that they can operate a little bit differently than a normal city board or commission. So if they think we need additional workshops or public input on a particular item, they can organize that, or they can have us do that as staff without sort of the typical structure that surrounds typical city boards and commissions. So from there, the plan will be created through sort of the framework that you see on the screen here. Step one of that is that the committee and us as staff will have to decide what the writing schedule is and what our objectives are in that writing process. We will review the chosen scenario that comes out of that scenario choosing process, and then we'll start crafting the land use chapter and framework around which the other goals and policies will be organized. So remember that the Flagstaff Regional Plan is really centered around land use, and then we build out goals and policies and chapters around things like transportation, natural resources, but its central focus is really on land use. So once we kind of focus on that land use chapter, then we'll have to decide what other chapters and accompanying goals and policies we want in the plan. We have certain things that are required by state law, but outside of that, there are a lot of elements that we could include or don't have to include. So once we kind of have a kind of layout for what we think the plan should look like, then it's really about iteration until the committee is ready to endorse a draft for legal and public review. So that was kind of a whirlwind, but that's all I have. I am happy to take questions now. You are also always welcome to reach out to myself or Sarah Dector, my boss, if you have any comments or questions about the plan update. So I'll stop sharing and see if there are any questions.
The game looked fun. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we had a lot of fun with that. It was fun. We actually, one of the best quotes I had, we went to the Montoya Center, and there was a gentleman there who used to work for the U.S. Geological Survey, and his last job, he told us, was mapping watersheds on Mars, and he said that the game was more difficult than that.
It looked like you had a bit of a conflict there, and those three categories were, what was it? You wanted to restrict density, but people wanted more streets.
Yeah. So I mean, this is also the fun of the game, is that you get people around a table who really have different views about what growth should look like in Flagstaff. So you saw there that, you have people that are really interested in seeing a denser downtown, something that supports better, more higher population in probably our most walkable area in the city, and kind of that smart growth mentality, while other people are more interested in seeing dispersed growth throughout the community. So I think it's one of the really exciting things about scenario planning, and especially kind of the more robust modeling work that we're doing, is that we'll get to test those different ways of growing. So I can kind of tell you what we've been looking at as staff is a scenario that is more focused on growth in the downtown kind of key areas downtown, versus one that looks at thinking about our outlying communities as developing activity centers. So those are two very different growth scenarios, but we'll get to model them both and bring those results back to the public so that they can actually see what those different ideas mean for the community. So it's possible that, you know, someone has an idea about how the city should grow, but once they see the modeling results of that, maybe that gives them pause, or maybe some different ideas about what the future should look like. So we're excited to do that modeling and then have those conversations later this fall.
Yes.
Do I see Councilmember McCarthy? Yes.
I'm a little confused about these citizen committees. There was one and you give a list of all the people that are already in it. And then there's another committee that we talked to, the city manager and the county manager are going to appoint. So can you discuss that?
Yes. So the first one that I mentioned that has already been established, that is our technical advisory group. And that group was put together with the sole purpose of helping us through this modeling process. So we're calling them our technical advisory group, because most of the people on the list would be kind of technical experts. So they're really just helping us think about the type of data that we're using in this urban footprint modeling process. They are not in any way involved in the writing of the plan or setting policy direction. It's really, yeah, to just advise us on technical matters when it comes to the modeling. The committee that I was talking about at the end, which Sarah has come before yourself and the other members of council to talk about, is the committee that will actually oversee the writing of the plan. So that has
Okay.
not been established yet. So we're still working. I think we're still nominate or responses from people that were nominated are still kind of trickling in. So we're working on putting the staff report together for that.
I might note that the city manager asked the city council members to make recommendations, maybe
Yes.
2 or 3 names.
Mhm.
I submitted 3 names.
Yeah,
Me?
so I
No,
think in
no.
total between yeah, so I think we received if I'm remembering correctly, I think 35 unique names from both city council and the board of supervisors. So some of those people have already declined, but but we've got a good group to choose from at this point. So you should be hearing something more on that in the near future.
I guess I had a question, again, kind of going back to that proposition that we need more roads. When
Mhm.
something like that comes in conflict with pre-existing policies such as the emergency climate declaration that said our road development would be held at 2019, how is that going to be dealt with?
That is a really good question. So I think it's important to remember that the regional plan is setting general policy direction. So we are not going to, we will have likely, like we did in the last plan, um, potentially some map that looks at like future alignments of roads that have already been kind of discussed. Little hard to talk about it because we haven't kind of seen the modeling results at this point. Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting conversation that we have later this fall if we're seeing. So I think and if you're familiar with Metro Plan's Stride Forward plan, which looked at um, a, probably more robustly, then we're going to have some coordination with them on modeling efforts. So some of our scenario planning or scenario modeling outputs will actually be run through some of Metro Plan's models. But I think some of their really robust modeling efforts that showed how difficult it was to move the needle on VMT, I think is really revealing. So we are interested to see what our scenario modeling results look, which is maybe a little bit more robust on the future land use element. Um, but I guess that's my non-answer way of saying those conversations haven't happened yet, and we haven't seen the modeling results. So it'll be exciting to see how that plays out.
Blood
So
sport.
stay tuned. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. All right.
Yeah, that's a lot to look forward to.
Yep.
I don't
Take
envy
care.
your job. Any other questions? I guess we're pretty much at a wait and see place. All right. Item number 2. Beaver Butler separated bike lane pilot evaluation and the Safe Streets for All grant application. Kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, we can do them separately. Let me, sure I have it here. Okay, so first on the pilot evaluation. um, it up a little bit. This is an email that was sent out updating council. So it talks about the May 23rd work session with council and council's direction to staff to work with BAC, Transportation Commission, and Public Works to help identify some problematic sections that could be removed. So you recall at our June meeting, we did go through the map in a little bit more detail and found some sections. So there's a couple of maps that I'll show you in a minute that show the results of that. Also, where barriers are taken out, our plans are to add a 2-foot bike buffer between the bike lane and the travel lane, where there are gaps. And ideally, we will extend that all the way down from the end of Sawmill to Ponderosa Parkway. So a section of Butler that did not get treatment with the new barriers. So the work is going to be done by Public Works, and they're anticipating doing it sometime later in July, so coming out. And then the last paragraph just talks about the where we're going from there with the Safe Streets for All project on Butler.
Sorry, it's gonna be this July?
Yes,
Okay.
this July.
Can we get a copy of this letter
Yes.
mailed to us? That'd be great.
So let me switch to the map. So just to get you oriented, the south corner of this map is Cherry, where bike lanes end. And the north corner doesn't quite reach to Forest, but Forest would be right up here. And then of course, here's the hospital. Here's the Bashas Shopping Center. So what's in orange is being taken out. What's in green is remaining. So along the Beaver corridor, we're taking out a number of sections on the downhill side just before you get to Cherry. This gives bicyclists a little bit more opportunity to move into traffic as you transition from bike lanes into shared lane markings when you cross Cherry. One small stray section just south of Columbus. And then it looks like both the remaining sections between the hospital's driveway is really that overpass and where it goes up to Forest. So before we move on to Butler, I'm going to pause there for a moment and see if there's any questions or comments.
I had a question. Does this mirror our conversation that we had last month? Is this the same? Are these the same changes that we had in mind on this map that we talked about?
Well, I'm presuming so, but I couldn't go back and compare them piece for piece.
No, I know. Yeah, me neither. That's why I'm asking.
It sounds right to me, but I wasn't taking
No,
notes.
Mark, is this the same as we had? Is this the same that we talked about?
Somebody should weigh in, but I don't know how much detail we got into. I know we looked at a couple sections.
I think we went all the way through it. We used the Google map.
Piece by piece.
I mean, he talked about the ambulances. He talked about that rogue little trunk right there,
Yeah.
and then this part so you can merge earlier. I mean, I
Jeff
think
has
that's,
his hands raised.
It looks somewhat familiar.
I think
Jeff?
so.
I'm sorry, Jeff has his hand up.
Oh.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah, the Beaver Street section is, I think, exactly the same as we talked about last month, with the exception, I think, up at the very north end, we removed an additional section. I think we planned to remove one of those two orange sections at the north end, the northbound, and then Public Works requested this southbound in those continued conversations. We kind of talked to the Bicycle Advisory Committee, talked to Transportation Commission, worked with Public Works, and I think we mentioned that last month that we were going to need to work with Public Works on some of their specific concerns. So there's one section up there that did get changed from the last time you saw this.
And just to clarify, so there will be a buffered striped bike lane?
Yeah, so we're working out the details of that because we haven't done this before. It's a little bit tricky to set up the striping truck with the two guns. It's easy to do in open areas, but it's tricky to do when you're kind of in an open area and then you have to go over the curb with the candlesticks because you can't just go over it. You have to move over and go around. So it's going to be a bit of an experiment, but we know for sure when there's a whole block, we can definitely stripe the double white line with the buffer. It's when there's kind of half a block and a third of a block openings. We just have to see how maneuverable our big truck is. In those areas, it'll get one stripe, but it may not get the two stripes. So it's kind of a to be determined. I hope that made sense.
I guess, will that narrow the bike lane or narrow the vehicle lane, or neither? The buffer.
Let's see. I think we will put the outside white line, the vehicle white line will be in the same spot it's always been. And then the bicycle white line will be roughly on the inside edge of the white curb. So it'll be about where the white curb is. We're attempting to get about a 2-foot total dimension. It's still kind of to be worked out, but it's roughly the same dimension. Typically, we'd think of shy distance up against a curb, so the bike lane would be more usable because there wouldn't be a curb right there. But if you were measuring just comparing the white line to the curb, you could say it got a little bit smaller, I think, but it would be like 3 inches or something.
Thank you.
Sure. And there are a couple changes on Butler that I'll highlight once you get that displayed.
We'll move on to Butler. Any more questions on Beaver?
Carry on.
Okay, so here's Beaver. Again, this is a little bit tilted. At the far corner is Milton. And down in this corner is Sawmill. So here's Lone Tree, San Francisco, and Beaver. And here there's a couple of short remaining sections that are being taken out. A short section near between Beaver and San Francisco. Another one as you approach the bus stop. One on the north side of the street. A couple of longer sections as you get into the curve on Butler. A couple of short sections. And then pretty much all of the remaining sections along the south side of the street from Lone Tree to Sawmill. So this is where there are a number of right turn lanes, and the barriers where they are now kind of frame those right turn lanes. So they exist in the bike lane between the travel lane, the bike lane, and the right turn lane.
Some of that looks familiar and some of it, I don't remember removing that whole curvy zone
Yeah,
off the side.
this part was not part of BAC's discussion, but that was originated with council direction from the 23rd, and then followed up with Public Works.
Well, this zone too. Right there. Why was that all removed?
Yeah, I thought we talked about the curves not being removing so much around the curves just because vehicles drift. Which they
So I
did.
can, oops, sorry. So, Chair, could I jump in? I can help with those too.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, Barton highlighted the Sawmill section, which we had talked about removing a couple, and then in further conversations and reviewing the tape with City Council, we went with the full removal of that Sawmill section eastbound. And then you may remember me talking about drainage concerns on the curve, and Greg Clifton, the city manager, and I were kind of scratching our heads about where Public Works was talking about that drainage concern. So we went back to them, and that is right where you have that cursor, Susan. That's the curve that has the drainage concern. So it's kind of the background on those removals.
I mean, that was a disaster in the snow and ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a freaking disaster area there. You couldn't walk it, you couldn't ride it, couldn't do anything with it, couldn't remove it because it was solid ice.
Yeah. Daniel, you had a comment?
Oh, no, it's my same question from before. How closely does this match what I just want to make sure as an advisory committee that our advice is making it up the food chain. I don't know. It sounds like that this is partially our plan, but partially
Personally not.
a public works plan.
Thank you, Daniel, hitting the nail on the head. I guess, I go back to, I would really, if we're gonna be getting like just buffered lines, buffered striped lines, how do you guys feel about some kind of textured, maybe not rumble strip, but rumble strip light or some kind of texturing that'll advise the cars are drifting over into our zone?
I mean, I thought that was pretty much shut down, like, we're not gonna be building new things in anticipation of the grant. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm happy that we're keeping them mostly. I don't know, like, I don't expect us to put in new infrastructure in anticipation that we're gonna redo the whole shebang in a year.
yeah. Well, so after Sawmill, I mean, there are no protected bike lanes, and it's just gonna be the buffered bike lanes, which I presume is a foot or two of the striped painting?
Yeah, I think probably 18 inches or 2 feet.
Yeah,
And two white lines, parallel white lines, longitudinal.
and again, I'd love to see some kind of texturing there as a more tangible reminder to cars. And that isn't gonna be overdone. That is part of the long-term plan for, what is it? Sawmill to Ponderosa.
I remember last meeting, like looking at the speed limit again wasn't, we weren't gonna discuss that at that meeting. I'm curious if that's changed, like have staff looked at the speed limit?
That was in the letter, I think.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. I need to pull it back up.
Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think council directed staff to look at speed limit issues.
Yeah, down the left.
And that's
The last paragraph.
crossing a little bit into the next topic, but looking at, the was that another? Something about our bike friendly rating that we got. One of the first things I recommended was lowering speed limits. I'm not finding them.
The problem with lowering speed limits is people basically ignore them, like you talked about 25 miles an hour and they go 40.
But it doesn't take too many test cases where people, if they see people being pulled over and the lights going on, they get the message. If you put one of those lights up that tells them how fast they're going and you get some enforcement, I think they'd slow down.
Actually narrowing the road, which is in effect what we're doing, will
Yeah.
probably have a bigger impact on slowing people down than a sign.
Use all the above.
Like in my neighborhood, people say, everybody should slow down. I said, well, park your car on the street. That'll slow them down.
I always thought the city should just stop fixing roads. That would slow people down.
I'd slow the bikes down too. It would increase business at BC Mundo as we have people replacing their bike wheels. Daniel, did you have a comment again, please?
Oh, no, that's an accidental raised hand. But yeah, if we pull people over, then the city gets more money of revenue generator.
And that money should go directly to bike infrastructure.
Bike infrastructure, amen.
Hallelujah.
So looking at the revisions on both Beaver and Butler, I'm glad to see it's not all going away. So we took a step forward when all that went into action. And I think that's what Daniel's big concern was. We took a step forward. We don't want to take a step back, and we don't even want to appear like we're taking a step back.
Right.
I like the fact that the double white shoulder line is extended further to where our window was. So I see that as we're gaining, and we haven't tested the double shoulder line anywhere in town yet. So at least we're testing something new out of this. And we're still leaving enough for a remnant, a reaction-based thing that just flew in overnight, because as a committee, we didn't even discuss those concrete curbs going in. They just appeared overnight. So it looks like we're not taking a step back. We still got our,
Treading water.
yeah, and we picked up a little more. I mean, I know it's a challenge for Public Works. I mean, I work for Public Works. I know what it's like running these striper machines, and I can understand their,
Maybe we needed a citizens painting brigade. I know a lot of people that would love to
yeah, well,
help with that. Oh,
6.
we got a lot to discuss yet today.
Can I make a comment about the?
Go ahead.
The existing.
Thanks, Estelle. See you.
On Butler, so I mostly stay off Butler when I can. I take side streets through south side of the campus. But the section that I do ride, the sections that I do ride, I used to actually ride on Butler more before this lanes went in. The cinders are still there from winter in a lot of those sections, and when there's light enough traffic, I actually go out in the car lanes to avoid all that cinder, or else go up on the sidewalk if it's been cleared from the sidewalks. There's so many sidewalks in town where the cinder's still an inch thick, still,
Yeah.
anyway. But I don't know if there had been any plan, if those were to stay, to get like a mini street sweeper or something.
They have
They're
that
really-
equipment.
Oh, why don't they use it?
I don't think it's got here yet, though.
The sweeper?
Have the sweepers
I
got,
thought this-
or the snowcats came? Are they still on?
The snowcats are
Oh, you
here.
mean the toolcats? We have toolcats, yeah. I don't think they have a sweeper
They don't have the
attached.
room attachment.
Yeah.
I was disappointed last time we met, the city said they had 5 sweepers and like 4 of the 5 sweepers were down, which is huge disappointing.
Oh,
Also,
And those are the street sweepers.
Yeah, I'm just,
it's only for one section that I can think of, but where there's a bus stop on the bike lane side. The sweeper, it looks like the sweeper has just been going all the way up to the sidewalk curb, and not, the full-size sweeper could also be going all the way to the left and sweeping out the bike lane where it's wide because there's a bus stop. But that's just a couple little sections, so not really the solution.
Hey, Susan,
yes, Kim.
Jeff has a comment. He put it in the chat, but I think you missed it.
I am, thank you for keeping up on that. Do you want to read it, Jeff, or tell us what you were thinking?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but I just wanted to mention, I didn't put it in writing in my email today because it's not completely solid, but we are tentatively scheduled to do this change starting Sunday, July 16th. We picked a Sunday for a little bit less traffic out there, especially related to that I-40 paving that keeps detouring lots of people onto Butler. So Sunday, July 16th is tentative. We'll do a little press release when it becomes solid, but that's currently the schedule. So we're only a week and a half away from these changes, which is pretty exciting. We don't usually move this fast, so this is pretty cool.
Yeah, removing bike structures goes faster than getting them in. Chalk. All right, Sunday no less. All right. Well, okay, so
I have
it's,
a question.
go ahead, Kim. I can't.
Sorry, and I don't know if this is relevant. How much is it costing the city to remove and make these changes?
That sounds
I'm
like
just-
something for Jeff.
I know. I'm just curious.
We have not tried to calculate those numbers, though we will track it as we do the work because it's all internal city crews. So we'll track it and we could get you a number, but we have not tried to estimate that number.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So at 6 o'clock, do you guys want to keep going into the safe streets? We need to go into that because we have to
We have
turn
to
this in.
order.
Yeah, it has to be,
Yeah.
it's due. So let's try and get that covered. And we'll just go to 6:30 like we always do.
Hopefully we save time for that pedestrian bicycle crash data report too. That'd be interesting.
That may have to go till next Monday, because that's a really interesting discussion as well, yes.
There'll be a invitation only presentation on that at Mother Road following 6:40, which you all are invited to. by the way.
Yeah, the whole entire, whoever's tuned in. Take her away.
Okay. Do you want me to show you did we look at the kind of the plan for what we're intending to do along Butler? I'm going to show you that first. Did we look at that at last meeting?
Do a quick review.
Okay.
Valerie, you look like you're thinking, there is no quick review.
Right. Okay, so here's a verbal description. Separated bike lanes for the whole length of the corridor along Butler from Milton to Sawmill. I'll show you an image in a couple slides of what that looks like. 3 new protected intersections at Beaver, San Francisco, and Sawmill. That's in addition to the one that will be constructed at Lone Tree as part of the overpass project. A new pedestrian beacon crossing at O'Leary, and some upgrades to the existing one at Humphreys. And then where we have room, a wider sidewalk and a parkway, so a buffer between the bike lane and the sidewalk and the street. And then potentially some landscaping as well. So here's kind of a map of where that goes. So we have Milton on the left, Sawmill on the right. The orange corridor is where we're going to convert the bike lanes from on-street to off-street. Blue shows the 3 protected intersections. The one in gray is the one that will be built as part of Lone Tree, and that dashed line shows where the overpass will go. And then the 2 red dots are the enhanced pedestrian crossings. And we can look at the cross section. So the top image shows kind of the existing, but really the existing before the pilot program went in. So we have 4.5-foot bike lanes that are on the street and separated from traffic by the stripe. And the bottom image shows that bike lane being moved off the street and put next to the sidewalk, and a parkway being built in between where travel lanes are and where that configuration is. And part of what that makes possible for a portion of the corridor is that there's a 10 feet of right-of-way you can see in the top image that was landscaped as part of the original construction of Butler. So we're anticipating using more of that in order to provide that space for the parkway.
So in the top, you have 70 feet curb to curb. On the bottom, you have 61 curb to curb. What is the width of the city right away? Is it that 70 feet or is it
100 feet.
100 feet?
15 plus 70 plus 15.
So why can't we use that full 100 feet? Is that because there's too many trees in the way?
We are. I think the bottom one shows we're using all but 4 feet of it.
Okay.
Room for expansion if we get more walkers, right?
There you go. And keep in mind that 10 feet where there's landscaping is for part of the corridor. In other parts, we have less space. In other parts still, there's an existing parkway between the street and the sidewalk. So those may look a little bit different when we get down to it. We get down to final design. Where we don't have a parkway, we don't have right-of-way, we may not have room for that landscape 5 feet in between the bike lane and the street. In that case, the bike lane will still be above a curb, but there won't be that horizontal buffer, but we'll have to deal with that kind of case by case.
So you're saying it may not be 5 feet, but it may have to whittle down, and then in some places we may not have it, then it whittles back up, and
Yeah.
ideally, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, some-
circumstantial, right?
Right, in some places it may go away altogether.
And this would be our plan moving forward into the future for all streets, maybe.
Yeah,
standard.
pending, for new streets, for sure. So all the
Yeah.
things that we're building that are new will look like this. Existing streets, it's just a funding question. And so, I mean, this is a $12 million project. So we can't do this everywhere.
Follow-up question. I mean, a few months ago, we did talk about like revising the code or for new streets and that's all like done and good and happy?
Done, good and happy, no,
Okay.
no.
Okay,
We're working on updating the engineering standards. The
Okay.
projects that the city is working on, we can do that with because we can, we can implement new ideas that go above and beyond the standards.
Yeah.
When it's our own project. When we have development build it, we may not have
Right.
that, it may be a different, battle.
okay,
But once we get it at engineering standards, then we'll be able to expect that of private development as well.
got it. So.
Really, the only one that's happening now that's significant is the hospital.
Right.
And they are doing it on one of the streets of their building. They are doing this treatment.
Okay.
On Beulah, they're not.
Okay, so what we talked about a few months ago is going into the engineering standards for the private developments in the future.
Right.
Okay, so that's in
It's
progress.
in progress.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for city projects, we already have it.
Right.
We're designing as part of it.
Thank you.
So any more questions? And then Jeff mentioned before that we'll continue buffered bike lanes from Sawmill all the way down to Ponderosa. So it will help a little bit more of that corridor. You may recall that the city is also working on widening Butler from Little America to 4th Street generally, and it will look like that bottom image as well. So we're getting most of that corridor. That leaves kind of a really awkward section between Little America and Ponderosa, which includes the interchange,
Cement jungle.
which is a cement jungle.
Right away deal.
Figured out right away deal. Yeah. So we'll have to consider options for that, to kind of make a corridor that
Yeah,
holds together a little bit more.
let's get this built first.
Tunnel that moves all the car traffic underground. Then we just take the top.
So with that, you want to go to the letter? So we're applying for a Safe Streets for All grant for that project. I mentioned that it's $12 million. Of that, 9.6 is a federal grant and 2.4 is a local match. The grant is due on Monday by 5 o'clock. That's Eastern Daylight Time, not Mountain Standard Time.
To put too
Sounds like we might have made that mistake before, huh?
We just don't want to make.
Yeah.
We here in the West have to be ready for every.
Right. We're trying to get in it by noon because that will cover us like pretty much for everything but Newfoundland time. And we won't find out until December if we get the grant or not. So you, the BAC approved a motion for a letter of support at the last meeting, and Susan and I have a draft of that for you. So I'm gonna have it up and just have you go ahead and give it a read, and then we'll have to move it down when you're ready.
Take a scroll.
Everyone ready?
That was a little bit too far for me. Can we go back one paragraph? Don't
Of
judge me.
course.
No judgment here. The cat's fault.
I think if I'd used Comic Sans, they would have.
Just glad I didn't put it in all caps.
Is VAC defined above?
It is.
It is, yeah.
I hate undefined acronyms.
I hate acronyms that are defined, but like 20 pages previously.
Well, right.
Was the C corridor?
It's like, I already forgot.
Okay.
Should we put in parentheses a little phonetic pronunciation for Susan's last name, just so that.
Shatuffle.
I don't even know if that'll help.
7 years.
I'll just teach him the little song. The Hershey song.
I think we hit on all the points there.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Looks
I'd like
great.
to make a motion to, submit this?
Motion
Yeah.
accepted. Can I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Bye.
Yep.
Aye.
We have approval, unanimous.
So we'll print that out after the meeting and have Susan sign it.
Nice.
You do that digitally?
I got my purple pen. I signed
Oh.
everything important with my purple pen.
I vote no on purple.
Daniel,
Is that purple in honor of Paul Deasy or?
is that?
Don't discriminate against purple, please.
Paul Deasy's favorite color was purple.
Oh, well, I remember some saleswoman was trying to sell me on purple because it was Michael Jackson's favorite color. And it's like, well, that doesn't do me any good.
Yeah, my high school colors were purple and white. Fight, fight, fight.
It's the color of my house.
Come and see your house. All right,
Great job.
so. Gosh, that only took us 13 minutes.
Did we get a letter of support from the city council? Did we talk about that too?
Well,
Asking them?
I thought we were gonna CC this to the city council
Oh.
mayor.
Yes, okay, right, because our thoughts
Yeah.
are useful, okay.
So would it be helpful to get another letter from council? I think that could help.
Sure. You can plagiarize as much as you want.
Hey, Martin,
Yes,
you got mine from Safe Kids, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Kim.
More letters don't hurt.
No,
right?
more letters help.
Yeah.
Send that to me and I'll pass it on, and see if we can get a letter from council. Of course, we're not back till the end of August,
Really,
really.
you're in vacay.
Well,
And here you are.
I know, it's like,
What a trooper.
yeah, it's not my only meeting. I've got a lot of meetings.
You're not starting your vacation as soon as we adjourn here.
If he came with the board shorts and a t-shirt, I
You
think.
have to drive to Bakersfield tonight.
I'm, on the 17th, I'm going on a multi-modal transportation type Amtrak, going all the way to Bellingham, Washington,
Oh, that's a cool place.
almost to Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go to Canada and get some good Canadian
Yeah.
heavy food.
Are you getting the sleeper car?
From LA to Seattle I am, the rest is coach.
That's gonna be, I mean, you're gonna be late because it's Amtrak, but you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah.
The Southwest Chief in that direction is way worse than the other direction because it's been going since Chicago or wherever.
Yeah.
People are tired. The train is filthy. They haven't just.
I don't know. I got it. It's fun. I love
Let's
sleeper cars.
Let me talk about Frontier Airlines, because we went to Minnesota last week. Very bad experience.
I have 3 words,
Here's what you pay for.
box of wine.
Buy a box of wine and then.
Yeah. I did a trip and we ended up coming into Salt Lake 9 hours late, but we ran into folks and we had a box of wine and it was a great trip.
I realize the official public comment period is over, but I just remembered another very specific concern and suggestion that I have.
Quick.
That'll go very quickly. So on campus, on San Francisco, there is a 2-directional bike lane on the east side of San Francisco. And it goes up to, it stops at the north edge of the cemetery as you're headed north.
Yeah.
And then from there on, it's unclear, is the sidewalk still, are you still allowed to bike on the sidewalk? No, yes. And from there on, also student pedestrian traffic gets quite heavy during campus rush hour, which has gotten I mean, I'm sure you know, campus rush hour is crazy now. You know, there's solid stop and go cars all the way off campus. And I cut through there. I have my own way to cut diagonally across campus when I'm living in Mountain Dell, if I'm headed east on Butler. And that's part of it. And even though there's plenty of room in the northbound lane, to be a little further up to the left without hugging the double yellow line, to leave plenty of room for cyclists. Many, many student drivers do not do so, and they're hugged pretty much up to the curb. And meanwhile, the sidewalk is just thronged with pedestrian students pretty often. And there's been times when, I can barely squeeze between somebody and the curb, and I'll do this gesture, like, or if their window's up and just say, leave room for cyclists. I've actually had one woman once say, no, go on the sidewalk. It was just like, anyway, it would be so easy to put in a bike lane there, and just a painted bike lane would be plenty because the traffic speed's so low. You don't really need a concrete divider to feel safe or anything, but it
And
would
you
just
could
tell
put
the darn
rumble strips.
drivers, just like, hey, you have plenty of room, could you be over to the left so we have room to bike past you? So there's just real simple suggestion.
Well, I like the rumble strips because you're only keeping students awake. And they're awake anyhow.
What?
Putting rumble strips, I've been told that you don't want to put real rumble strips in city because it keeps people awake. They don't want to hear it, and I understand that.
Oh, right.
But
Well, and there's no dorms near there anyway.
all right. So can we do the crash data in 12 minutes or do you?
I'll leave that to the group, whatever your preference. We could rush through it, but it doesn't leave as much time to talk about things if you want to do
It
that.
was pretty interesting. Can we defer that till next time?
Of course.
How does Daniel and Kim feel about that?
I'm good. It'd be fun to talk about it, so I say we save it.
It's pretty interesting, yeah. All right. Place on hold till August. I had the next date, August 3rd. How many people are gonna be here still on August 3rd? I think,
Our attendance is freaking phenomenal at BAC.
freaking phenomenal. Okay,
Do you know what you guys are really good at also? I'll give you some props is when I send out an email and say, email me back and tell me if you can come or not. You all do it. Like this week, we did it on Monday morning and you all had responded by like Monday afternoon. And
in the peg.
We'll say it was previous BACs or previous members of BACs, but it's taken a long time to get to this point where you respond. And the benefit is like, we know going into the meeting, like who's going to be here and who's not. And
If we have a quorum.
yeah, if we have a quorum and, when we don't know that, sometimes like you get to a meeting and like the public is here, our council liaison comes and then we don't have a meeting and we have to all go home at that point. So I mean, that the flip side, the other part of that is that we generally have quorums too. It's not like we know in advance that we're not gonna have a quorum. We know in advance that we are going to have a quorum. So, keep up the good work.
You have us trained up. We gotta get you a new generation in here so you
Yeah.
can retrain them.
Yeah. When us old timers leave, you're gonna have a job ahead of you. And much excitement. Very good. I move to, withdraw, quit, leave,
Adjourn the meeting?
adjourn the meeting. You definitely need a chair that loves the Robert's Rules of Order better than I do.
I don't think you need a motion, you just do it.
I just did. We're all free to go. Go forth, cycle happy, be safe.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Carter.
Have the happy
Hey.
heat dome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. See you
Thank
next
you.
time.
All right. Well, I don't know about this Kindle Fire. I may have to throw it in the street again. I found it in the street.
I guess these are supposed to be adjustable lumbar supports that you can slide up and down. I appear to have, in playing with this, sliding it up and down, I
You
appear
broke
to have
it.
broken
You
one
broke
side.
it. Well, you better leave quick then.
Well, it's not
Before the
nothing's
fingernail-
broken.
finger-
It just came.
It's just out of adjustment.
Oh,
yeah.
no, it came loose, but it's not, there's no broken plastic. It's just.
What are you going up to Bellingham for? You got family up there?
Yeah, my sister lives in Bellingham.
That's the town right south of the border, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blaine is the only one closer.
So my brother and sister used to always live in Seattle. And so I just take the train and they'd come down to pick me up. Well, now my sister lives in Bellingham and my brother lives at Camano Island, which is like an hour and a half north. So I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm going to take the train to Seattle. I'm going to get a hostel for the night, walk back to the train station, pick up another train that goes to Bellingham. And then my sister's going to drive me all around to my brother's place. And then my cousin from Canada and my cousin from San Francisco are going to be there. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then my daughter lives in, her two kids live in Woodinville, which is probably an hour's drive from Bellingham. So she's loaning me her car. Last time I flew up, let me tell you about Frontier Airlines. My wife has a brain injury, and overstimulation is the big issue.
Yeah.
Airplanes are overstimulation. They would not let us sit together. Now, when she started shaking and everything, the lady next to her says, you with somebody? Yeah, my husband's back there. She says, change seats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then I had a carry-on, which wasn't much bigger than that. A little bigger. They made me pay, get this, $99 to carry on.
Wow.
Now, coming back, we're on Delta, no charge for carry-ons. We says, can we sit together? Yes, no problem. Oh, the other thing is, Delta, they give you free snacks, free drinks, non-alcoholic drinks. On Frontier, if you wanted like a can of pop, like $3.50 or $4.50 or something. If you want a little bag of peanuts, you got to pay for that. They nickel and dime the hell out of you. I will never fly those guys again.
Did you see my brother? He's a flight attendant for Delta.
All right.
So Frontier will not be flying into Flagstaff anytime soon?
These are both out of Phoenix,
I flew in a Legion once from Phoenix to Green Bay. It was not terrible. And when you fly on a Legion from Phoenix to Green Bay, you're actually flying from Mesa to Appleton.
Yeah.
Well, people were talking about Amtrak's always late. My experience with Amtrak has been pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
And I will tell you, one time I flew to Seattle And I got there 11 hours late. So airplanes have problems too.
Absolutely.
We used to, when I worked in the Chicago area, we used to regularly take Amtrak down to Springfield. And they had a schedule where you could take a train down in the morning and then come back in the afternoon. And we, go out for meetings or whatever. And one time the train at Springfield was an hour late and it made up that hour. Or almost an hour on the way down. There were no stops along the way.
Well, I just, I'll be honest, I love Amtrak.
Oh, it's fun. It's just
I
fun.
I read a book, I talk to people, I eat
Look
the
up the
meals.
dome.
Yeah.
Oh, the dome.
Yeah.
It's so
Can't walk
fun.
around, can't walk around on a plane.
No.
Eavesdrop on Pennsylvania Dutch and try and figure out what the hell they're saying. Have you run into, I run into Amish every time I've taken the Southwest route.
So by the time I got to Minneapolis, my legs were all cramped up because there is no way to straighten your legs up on an airplane. Because the seats keep getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
Amtrak, I can put my foot like that into the seat in front of me. And you can see I'm fairly tall.